I just got myself a new toy. The Honda CB500X. This is the brand new 2020 CB500X from Honda. It's true that I just got it 2 weeks ago, but I already have more than 1,400 kilometers on it, so I think it's time for a review. So this is a motorcycle that is more aimed at beginners because it's available for the A2 license. So it is limited to 47.5 horsepower, which honestly is not really a problem at all. You have plenty of power on the road, on the twisties, and it's very comfortable to ride in the cities as well. It's very nimble. This is something that I really like about this bike. It's very nimble. You can just throw it in the turns, in the corners, and overall it's very easy to ride. This is something that is really good, I think, even if you're an experienced rider, because I'm not exactly new to riding motorcycles, and I still appreciate a very easy to ride motorcycle. It has enough power, like I said, but it's not too much, it's not overwhelming, and you always feel in control of the bike, and this to me is something very important. I want to mostly do traveling and exploring. Some people buy this kind of bike to commute from home to work, and this is fine. I did this a little bit and it works fine. You know, it's, like I said, pretty agile in the cities, so there's no real problem using this bike. But I wanted something, personally, I wanted something that was capable on the road, but also was able to do some off-road. This is something very important to me because I come from an enduro background. I've had an enduro bike, the Yamaha 450 WRF, for about 7 years, and I really like to ride it in paths and in the mountain and even somewhere you can't find any paths. So coming from that, I couldn't see myself having a bike that would only be for road and, you know, no off-road at all. Now, in terms of off-road, there are a couple things that you need to think about. As it is right now, there is no modification whatsoever in terms of handling. The tires are the default ones from the factory. The suspension is untuned. It's the tuning from the factory. I didn't change anything. I didn't add any crash bars or bash plates, which I think are two of the most important things when you're going to go off-road, because at some point, no matter how good you are, you will drop the bike. It will not be something that you want. You don't even want to dream about it, but it will happen. So when it happens, you better have some crash bars to protect the more important parts of the engine so that you don't end up stranded in the middle of nowhere without any possible assistance. The default tires are pretty good on road, and off-road it's okay. It's not the best, but it's doable, you know. And these tires are marketed as 50% road, 50% off-road, and I think it's about right. However, if you're trying to go somewhere muddy, where it's very wet and you have a lot of rain, it's not going to work well. It doesn't have the right structure to be able to propel you through these kind of terrain, and it's really going to be a mess. I don't recommend doing that. However, for light off-road, some nice gravel and relatively flat and easy terrain, it's going to be fine. It's absolutely fine. I've tested it many times and it's really good. Another point that is very important, to me at least, is the fuel consumption, and this bike has a stellar performance in terms of fuel consumption. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, over the whole 1,400 kilometers that I did with this bike so far, my average consumption was 3 liters per 100 kilometers. 3 liters per 100 kilometers. This is amazing. It means that whenever you take your bike, you can do a little loop, 300 kilometers or something like that, and it's gonna cost you less than 10 bucks. And this, I think, is really amazing. In terms of the engine, you should not be expecting a roadster engine like the MT-09 or, you know, something of the sort, or even the CBR650. The CBR650 has much more power, but it has less torque. And what I really like with this engine is that it has quite a good amount of torque in the low range to mid range in terms of RPMs, which allows it to kind of lug along at lower speeds and low vibration and low consumption. I usually like to ride like that. I don't really like when it's screaming in pain at high RPMs, close to the red line. Some people like it. I don't really like it. But even though this engine is very good at low speeds, it's still good at higher RPM, especially when you hit the 5,000 RPM. It starts to be a little more angry, and you can feel that it has some decent acceleration, some decent torque. Now, if you know a little bit about this bike, you might have heard that, for example, the dashboard is sometimes a little hard to read. I personally didn't find this to be an issue at all. It's just when the sun is directly behind your head and hits the dashboard here, it is quite impossible to read the numbers, but every other time of day, it's totally fine. I personally quite like the way it's done. You have large digits for the speed and the gear indication so that you always know at a glance how fast you're going and in what gear you are. It's not necessary to have the gear indicator, but most motorcycles nowadays have it, and it's a little plus when you want to be sure to minimize your fuel consumption. For example, you know at that speed you need that gear, etc., etc. Another advantage of the CBX500 is that it's quite affordable when you compare it to the rest of the competition. You've got the KTM 390 Adventure, which is almost the same price, but the engine is a little bit less powerful. It's about 42 horsepower. This one is 47.5, which is the maximum limit for an A2 driving license. Like I was saying, in terms of modification, I only ordered one accessory from the factory, which is the 12-volt outlet, because I want to use this for exploration, and for me it is extremely important that I have some means to recharge my phone or a GPS, because otherwise it becomes very, very tedious. So that was the only modification that I ordered from the factory. And then you have a heap of other modifications that you can add to the bike, whether it is official stuff from Honda or aftermarket parts from third parties. In conclusion, I would say that this bike is perfect for what I want to do with it. I think that this is the most important part when you're about to choose a motorcycle. You have to know what you want to do with it, and from that you can identify what motorcycle is going to be good for you. I can tell you what motorcycle is going to be good for you. I know that this one is good for what I want to do with it, which is a little bit of commuting here and there, but mostly motorcycle traveling and a little bit of exploring. Mostly in Europe, where the roads are very nice and safe, but also potentially in some more remote areas where the terrain is a little more complicated and everything, but this is for the future. So that's it for my impressions of the Honda CBX500. A great bike overall, easy to ride, extremely good for commuting and for some exploration, very cost effective, very low consumption, and capable of doing both road and off-road. That's it for my impressions. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel because there's going to be a lot more content like this and about the travels that I do with my bike coming up in the next few months. So see you there on the road.
I wish I knew how to be fine all by myself. Damn, I'm so lonely. I wish I didn't need to be around anyone else.